Get rid of this little box. Good afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about establishing a strong online presence for your library today. And this is going to be pretty basic. So I wanted to start off with a couple of polls to find out exactly where you're at. And so Calais is going ahead and putting those in now. And what I'd like with the social media is, I'm glad to see, so far everybody's saying that they do have a social media presence, but where is your library in social media? And you can just pop that in the chat. So when we get to that, I can get an idea as to what you're actually using. And it looks like we've got everybody on who's responded. Okay, and so you all have websites, so I presume you're just trying to kind of glean a little bit more information on there. So you can see where we're at. And I was kind of thinking possibly some of you were thinking that maybe, it needed a little work. Of course, I think websites are always a work in progress. So it's good to get some more information and figure out what some of your options are. And those are the results. And I'm going to go ahead and close that off. And as far as a little reminder about Zoom, we like to put in our Zoom netiquette so that we're all making this a little bit easier for all of us. It's nice to know who we're actually dealing with. So if you don't have your name in there, go ahead and rename yourself and remain muted, because my dog barking is probably as much superfluous extra noise as we need. We don't need everybody's dogs and phone calls and all the other kind of good stuff going on in the background. Video, reminder that if you do have your video on, you may also be in the recording later. So if you're happy with that, that's great. If not, you can go ahead and turn your video camera off. And I'm covering over the last one, so I can't read it. What's in the last column, Calais?
Chat. So click the chat to add your comments and questions, and definitely I'll be monitoring those things. So I'll point those out to Suzanne as they come through.
Great, thank you. Okay, so good stuff. Thanks everybody. And I do see that people who have been, responding mostly on Facebook, a little bit of Facebook and Instagram. So good to know. And now I'm going to turn my camera off so I'm not distracting myself, but know there's a real person behind here. Now, I think it's always good to, whenever you're starting this, is to kind of figure out why. What do you want to achieve with your library on the web? And one of the big things is nowadays, if you're not on the internet, you don't exist. So that's one of the primary reasons that we want to be there. When people go and do a search, they pop in your library's name. If nothing comes up, it's like, oh, okay, obviously there's no library there. So that's a very basic part. Also, when they're looking for you, they'll probably want to know where you are, when you're open, maybe if you have virtual services available, be able to have access to that. I think everything on that top tier is just really basic kinds of information. And so we all definitely want to be offering that. The bottom line, I think, tends to be a little bit more individual And some libraries may want to focus more on some of these things than others. And so these are things that you can think about and decide exactly what's most important to you and how you want to try to present that. Now, when I was starting off, and most everybody when they're starting off, when they're looking, they're probably going to start off with a Google search. And so I started off doing a Google search for one of my libraries, Phillips County Library. And now, hopefully, when you do a search for your library, it's nice if it comes up as one of the first few options, but also you'll get a little box in there. And that gives you some kind of brief information about the library. And hopefully you've all noticed this before, and you've all noticed this about your libraries. And in this case, it gives the address, hours. So the question is, are those hours accurate? Phone. People can have an opportunity to ask questions, to get answers on there. There's reviews. And you can claim your library. Has everybody on here actually done a Google search and claimed your library on Google? Just curious. You can give some thumbs up or in chat whether you've done this or not. I think this is one of the first basic things that everybody should do. And you can do that, the own this business part. Right here, it says suggest an edit or own this business. If you click on own this business, it'll take you to a page where you can claim it. And one of the advantages to claiming it is then you can update the information, and you'll also get some stats from Google on people searching for your library and, how often they're searching and things like that. And you can update this information. So you can add some of your own photos, you can add some of your own information. And so I think that's something that everybody should do that's pretty quick and easy. And it will ensure at least people doing nothing more than a Google search will get accurate information about your library. Now, there are other search engines as well. Microsoft would like you to know that Bing is an option. And yes, this will be available. And hopefully we should be doing closed captioning as well. I wonder if we can do that.
Yes, that's correct. There'll be a transcript available.
Okay, there'll be a transcript. But Bing is also an option for searching. And so I also put Phillips County Library in Bing. And I was interested to see that there were a number of inaccuracies as far as this one is concerned. That picture is not Phillips County Library in Malta. And the hours were wrong. The website link, like I said, went to the sheriff's webpage. And my clue as to what was going on with that came below where I cut off. There was a Facebook link that actually went to a library in Arkansas, which was the Phillips County Library that the picture was of, I discovered. So, I would suggest in that case going on and, claiming, your library from Bing as well could be advantageous as far as clearing up that information and making sure that people aren't going to the sheriff's office looking for information about your library. So and I wouldn't necessarily worry about, finding every possible search engine. There's a lot of alternatives that use either Google or Bing, but I think those are a couple of the basics. So I would definitely suggest doing that as a first and foremost. Another thing you can get from searches is sometimes they have a section in there about, people also ask. And so in this case, they had a couple of other questions in there, is there a library in Malta? And when is the Phillips County Library closed? A couple of just really basic questions. And, Wikipedia did answer Phillips County Library is a public library in Malta. That little number 26 thing there that you see, the footnote, that goes to Aspen, actually. That's how they verified it. And we'll see that in the next slide. The answer to when is the Phillips County Library closed wasn't particularly well answered, I thought, by the news source, because they just gave one particular instance of closed. But sometimes you can kind of get an idea of what people are interested in. And so that might be some information you'd want to offer on your webpage or through another source online. Like I said, for those of us in Montana, probably familiar with Aspen, or at least I hope you're familiar with Aspen. And we do have in there access to information about location, hours, contact information. And so the fact that both Google and Wikipedia were linking to this page show, in addition to us reminding you of this periodically, that it's important to keep this accurate and keep it up to date, because this is a place that people may go to find information about your library. Okay, so we've found a couple of ways to answer, pretty easily where and when questions. Now we're going to get into the what and whys. So social media. There are lots of different social media options. And so I popped down just some of them on here. And, when I asked earlier, for those of you who were in at the very beginning, what social media accounts that your library had, it was mostly Facebook and a little bit of Instagram, which is to be expected. There are libraries that have accounts on YouTube and Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok and other various ones. And they're generally larger libraries with larger staffs, but, and then there are others that you may have accounts on personally and that you may go to for information, but you're not necessarily going to use them to promote your library. And just as kind of an aside that I thought was fun, those of you who know me and have done other things with me know that I like to use image generating software. And so DALL-E, so I asked it to give me some cats on cell phones. And so it generated this nice little image for me. And there's often something wrong with the picture. So notice this poor cat has a tail coming out of its leg in there, which I always think is fun. Can you spot what's wrong with the AI generated image?
I thought it was just a fetching, dash of the bangs across his forehead. Very Elvis-like.
That is fetching. Some advantages and disadvantages of social media. I think one of the big advantages is you're meeting people where they are. Oftentimes in library land, we're asking people to come to us, come to our library, come to our webpage. More and more we're trying to go out to where they are. And so, when you've got an account and you're posting stuff on social media, you're going to where they are anyway. It's really easy to post updates. There's a possibility for interaction with people. They can comment. They can ask questions, you can reply to them. It's a nice way to promote programs. Sometimes you can even do live broadcasts of programs, and it can be positive branding for your library. They'll get to know you and what you're all about through your social media presence. Disadvantages are segmentation. people are on different, they're on one platform, they're not on another. So how do you decide which one to go to? Algorithms can be difficult. So you can put a lot of stuff out there, but you may not be getting to the people you want to because Facebook wants you to give them money to reach the people you want to reach. Interactions can be negative. Face it, there's some trolls out there who just like to be negative about just about everything. It can be difficult to have a respectful discussion of serious issues. You can have people bringing up kind of hot topic issues, and then other people, responding angrily and kind of get in the middle of some of that. And it may be difficult for you to really share all of the information you want to share because the platforms just aren't set up for that. So one of the things I think is really, you need to know your audience, a little bit about the medium you're choosing, and your staff's comfort level. So as far as age goes, I think we all know now that Facebook is trending older. So I wouldn't use it to try to reach teens for teen programming, because teens tend to regard it, well, teens may be on there, but only to communicate with mom or grandma. TikTok, of course, is very popular with the younger demographic, but you've probably heard in the news lately that there's calls to ban it. So while it can be useful now, it may not be available to us at all in the very near future, depending on how that goes. In library land, I think we tend to be more comfortable with text. And it seems like virtually everything now is trending more towards visual content, to photos, to videos. Facebook and Twitter have always been more text-based, but they're tending to go more visual as well. Short videos are really kind of becoming a prevalent form across all the platforms. And, TikTok is really the dominant one in that way, but Facebook has its version of that. And, Instagram is pushing that. So, you're seeing a lot more short video content. Beware of accessibility in there, both captioning for videos when you put them up there, and then also when you are using visual content, photos, making sure that you're putting in alternate text or putting in little descriptions about it. So anybody who has visual problems and is using a text reader can still, figure out what you're trying to communicate through there. And it really does help to have staff post who actually use the platforms. I know in some cases, libraries have set up personal pages as library pages. And I think probably early on, because nobody had a Facebook account, so they just set up one for the library. And well, okay. It's not, it's social media. So it's a good thing if you're on every now and then checking on it. You have some idea of who's interacting with your library and maybe what's going on with other libraries. As a personal instance, a nonprofit I was affiliated with a while back had a person who was in charge of doing Facebook who just hated Facebook, and she didn't want to be on it at all. And so, yeah, she would do the obligatory posts, but she never went on and checked any of it. So it wasn't good, because people would respond, they'd send comments, and she didn't check on it. So, try to find people and assign people who, will go on and check it every now and then.
Hey, Suzanne, could I ask a question really quick?
When we're talking about, and what you said just now really made a lot of sense about, who would do the work and that, especially with social media. But something else you said struck me. And so when we're talking about Facebook and we're talking about Twitter, and some of our participants are using Instagram, like, how would you weigh the importance of making sure that your website is up to date and inviting and has all the information versus how much time and effort do you put into social media platforms, some of which are kind of, like you said, not popular with the kids, or, like Twitter, before too long, Twitter isn't even going to be a thing. So like, what's the next thing? So the basic question is like, how much time should people spend on making sure their website is great versus putting content out there through social media?
Well, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we get into talking about websites in particular. But yeah, I think that's got to be up to individual libraries. I think one of the trends now is that people are using their web pages more as kind of a landing page, or kind of a home base where they keep information that is more permanent, or at least a bit more long lasting. And they put the more ethereal kinds of things, the more time-based things on social media. And you can kind of interact, you can kind of, combine that sort of thing by having some of those things show up on your web page, so that somebody coming up to the web page can see, your recent posts to, various social media. But I think that's one of the trends now, is using social media for a lot of the really kind of timely things, because, it does get out there and it reaches people quicker, and then it kind of fades into the background as, more, when it used to be very time-based and the most recent thing always showed up at the top, it was a good way that, okay, the most current stuff, and then all the old stuff kind of fell to the bottom. And, and it worked out nicely that way. Now with the algorithms, that can be changed a little bit, but I think that's just kind of a rule of thumb. And one of the things I suggest is do look at other libraries and see how they're doing it, and learn a lot from them. That's why I'm pulling up some of these as examples, because I think I've pretty much dropped, as a little bit of personal information in there, I've pretty much dropped off of Facebook as far as following individuals, because it was just too much for me. And now I just follow libraries and a few other groups and things. So and that works for me, because I'm interested in seeing what libraries are doing. And you can do that kind of thing too. You don't have to have all the noise. But thanks for the question, Calais. So I pulled up an example from a Facebook page, and this one's from Conrad Public Library. And you can see, once again, through this page, they are providing some basic contact information. And also, you can see there's some reviews in there. They're talking about free Wi-Fi, and wanted to put in a little caution on this as well, that looking through some of these when I was getting ready with the reviews, people do put spam and scammy things into reviews. It might be more for larger libraries than smaller libraries. Like, I took a look at Billings in Missoula, and they had a whole slew of people trying to do these crypto things. And so I notified them about that, and they're aware, trying to stay ahead of it. But do take a look at these things every now and then, and weed them out. And if you do get a negative review, sometimes it's nice to kind of take that in and see if you can respond and if it's valid. So take advantage of it. And I wanted to give an example of one of the posts from Conrad I thought was an interesting example for a number of reasons. Here's an upcoming event they have up there, which is very attractive. The one downside, the one criticism I would make of this is that this is not going to pass when it comes to being able to see easily because there's not a lot of high contrast. So somebody with a vision impairment is probably going to have a hard time with this. If you're putting us through a web validation thing for accessibility, it would fail for not having enough contrast on there. So when you are making things like this, make sure that you are making it easier to view using higher contrast, and also perhaps putting in alternate text like I'd mentioned earlier. And chose one of my photos as an example of alternate text because everyone needs to see a gargoyle and a leprechaun hat. And if you do want to add alternate text to a photo that's already up there, you can do so. You see the 3 dots up in the upper right-hand corner. You just click on those and you get this little drop box coming down, and one of the options in there is change alt text. Click on that, and then you can put in a brief description of what is in the photo. So if somebody who can't actually see it or can't see it clearly will know what's in there. And so in this case, I just said gargoyle and a green leprechaun hat. So everyone could appreciate this photo, whether or not they can see it clearly. And down at the bottom is a link to a blog post that talks about how you use alternate text in Facebook. And we'll put all these links together and so that you can get them later. But I thought that was a useful thing to point out. Besides, I just wanted to share that great photo. And Instagram was the other social media one that we were talking about. And so this is Billings Library's Instagram page. And this is off of a website instead of a phone. So you can see there's more room to look at. I thought what was interesting about this, because we're talking about the information that you can provide on social media pages in addition to just whatever it is you're sharing in the posts. And Instagram doesn't give you nearly as much room for information about your library. They do have the address and phone number on there and room for a link. I thought it was interesting that what they were linking to on here was not the web page, but it was a link tree page. So we'll look at that in a sec. But then also Billings found a way to put some links into some of the services that they wanted to highlight specifically. Book Hunt, Express Lockers, Libby magazines, Reader's Corner, Shoutbomb, and most of these are presumably to their website. And also point out that with their individual photos and posts and memes they had on there, they had nice descriptions on there of what was in the photo, what was behind the program, so that anybody who was clicking through there and looking at it would have some idea in addition to just the nice pictures. So link to set up something with it. And I did take great, my internet connection is unstable, so bear with me, folks. Hopefully I won't lose you in the middle of this. But anyway, with Linktree, basically you can put together a bunch of links on this. Billings is using it to provide direct links to specific sections of their website. When I was looking at more examples of it, it seemed mostly used by creators to highlight what they're doing on various sites and to monetize what they're doing. But here's another option if you want
We'll give it a second here. Hopefully Suzanne joins us, rejoins us in just a moment. Melissa will ping Suzanne about your question about social media policies. And when she's able to come back. And I'm not familiar with Linktree or Wakelet, so I don't know if anyone else can speak to those tools. Welcome back, Suzanne.
I love Spectrum. I love Spectrum.
I had the similar thing happen to me in our webinar earlier this morning, but I was not presenting. So
Yeah.
this is the moment where everyone can take a drink of water, stretch their legs for just a moment, and Suzanne will have her presentation shared with us again momentarily. Oh, there it is.
Yes, magic. Yeah. Yeah. All you can do is just breathe and go, can't wait till I'm on fiber. Okay. Anyway, as I was saying, when I was so rudely interrupted, I grabbed a few library web pages off the web of libraries around Montana, just to give an idea of the variety that's out there. And so Ekalaka Public Library is a very small library. For those of you in Montana, you know where it is. And they're using Google Site Creator for theirs. And, you know, it's very simple. West Yellowstone and Lincoln County and Lewistown are all using WordPress. Wasn't sure about Lincoln County, but I think West Yellowstone is doing their own, and they're still working through it. Obviously, what they want to do is they want to highlight the natural beauty around there right by Yellowstone Park. Lewistown has somebody, I Create Web Services, who did their website for them, but they're all using WordPress. And Sunbursts in the middle, Toole County Library, it's a branch, and that's the one that comes up when you search for Toole County Library, interestingly enough, but it's on a county website. So it's pretty simple, pretty basic, but the county provides it for them. So you can see there are a range of different options that come up when you're doing a website. And so I thought we'd break down a little bit some of the basic components of it that you need to be concerned about. First is domain name. And, you know, that's what you find up there. You can have a custom domain name, a custom URL like anylibrary.org, or you can have one that's part of a company URL or a county site or anything. And those are a little bit different in that usually you'll have like your library name and then the name of the website host.com. And, you know, we'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes. And then there's the web host, that's a server where your web pages are. That could be local or distant, paid or free. And finally, it's the software that you're using to build the website. WordPress is probably the most common at this point, but there's also a number of proprietary softwares that you'll find that individual web hosting sites are using. So one of the decisions that you need to make is, do you want to do it yourself in-house or hire somebody to do it? And by hiring, I mean, you know, you can get a student to do it, or, you know, you can hire a firm. But I think you need to decide, you know, which way is best for you. One of the, and if you do hire somebody to do it, how are you going to update it? Because one thing that happened early on is we had a lot of people get people to do their websites for them. Oftentimes, you know, somebody in town, you know, who knew how to do it. and then they left, especially with students, it happens, they graduate, they move away. And then the website never got updated again. And so, we'll still run across some from like 2010, not so good. So, it can be great to have somebody else do it, but there is always that question about how do you keep it up to date? And if you really don't want to mess with updating it, that's one of the reasons I was going into some of these other options. How can you get around having to get in there and muck around with it all the time? Well, by relying on social media and, relying on some of these other tools. Now, there are what I call all-in-one solutions. So talked about those 3 components, but you can get companies that will take care of all of those for you. So you don't have to worry about all the individual pieces, and they can be paid or free. Although if you're going to have your own custom domain name, there will almost always be a charge for it. And the chief advantage, as you can imagine, is that they do it all. You don't have to muck around with individual services and making sure that you're paying the bills for all those individual services. The disadvantages are that you can have limited choices. The prices can be an issue. And I think probably most importantly, it can be difficult to move your site down the road if you should decide to do so, because then you're going to have to figure out how to break it up. And if they're using proprietary site building software, you're probably not going to be able to move it. You're going to have to start over from scratch. And that's what happened with a site that I was working with that used Squarespace, which was a nice service. They had good customer service and everything. But once we decided to move off of that, we had to start all over again. And we ended up going with WordPress. Now, that's not always so bad because sometimes your site needs a refresh anyway, and it can be a good excuse to do it. It's like, oh, okay, guess we're gonna have to freshen it up entirely. Some examples of all-in-ones. Wix.com is one. I think I saw somebody, I remember in the chat, that was either using Wix or Weebly for one of those. These are a couple of common ones that libraries often use. They have both free accounts and paid ones. The free accounts generally do not include domain names. And I'm putting them both pretty similarly. They both use their own proprietary site builder software. And what comes with the site builder software is templates. And we'll look at those in a little bit. And you can upgrade from free to paid fairly simply. And some of them make it kind of difficult to find the free accounts, but if you want to go with one of those, I would recommend that you start off with the free and play around with it a little bit, see how you like it, how comfortable you are with it, and then you can always decide to pay down the road if you should decide to do so, rather than getting yourself involved in having to pay a whole bunch and then deciding you really don't like it. Google Sites, I mentioned Ekalaka was using that. They also have a free option. I didn't even realize they were still around until I started researching this, because they don't make it easy to find at this point, but they are still out there and you can still use them. And you can also pay to have Google host your domain. So, they, like I say, they are doing the all-in-one stuff for you. I'd say the downside, like with a lot of Google services, is you never know how long they're going to keep doing it, because they drop things occasionally. So, I'm surprised that they're keeping as long as they have. But, if you're comfortable with Google, you already have accounts on numerous things, that might be something to consider too. And then the final one I'll bring up, and there are more, is WordPress.com. Like I said, WordPress is very common site building software. They also run a web server. And so you can use WordPress on WordPress and they have a free option. They also have reasonably priced paid accounts on there, and you can use your own domain name, once again, for a fee. A little bit more about domain names. Are they necessary? No. I mean, custom domain names. Not at all. Why even really consider one? I think probably mostly because they look better in promotional materials. Having anylibrary.org in your promotional materials looks a little bit better than anylibrary.wordpress.com, but does it make all that much difference? No. And when you're linking all over the place, instead of actually seeing stuff in print, probably doesn't make that much difference. I did want to point out a little bit with some of the issues and why being familiar with them at least is important, and why it might make a difference if you have a very common library name or common county name or something like that. The reason we have them in the first place is because msl.mt.gov may not be incredibly intuitive, but it is easier than 161.7.31.28, which is the IP address, which the computer actually understands. It doesn't understand the letters. So we translate it. It's kind of like giving it an address that it will understand. And they can make search a bit easier. Knowing that msl.mt.gov is what we're actually looking at can make a search for Montana State Library easier, because whenever you pop that in the search bar, you're going to come up with Montana State Library and Montana State University Library. It can be a little bit confusing if you're not quite sure which one you're really looking for. Popping msl.mt.gov in the box is going to take you right there. And, like I said, the branding, it just looks a little nicer, but not necessary. If you do want to go that way, quickly, what that's all about, where it comes from, is ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. These are the people who keep track of all the names and making sure that they're linked up with the right numbers. You won't deal with them if you decide to get a domain name at all. You as a registrant will actually be dealing with a reseller or a registrar. So while I wanted to put this up here, don't worry, you won't be tested on it. Who you will be dealing with if you decide to go with a domain name is somebody like hover.com. And they're the ones that I use. I like them because they're a nice Canadian company, and they don't do anything else but domain name registration. So they're not trying to sell me other stuff. What I wanted to show you on this was just to give you a slight idea of how many domains are available. And this is what they top level domains that they talk about that are for sale. And this is just the trending list. And it's a Canadian company, so they start off with CA for Canada, and it goes down to XYZ. So you can get a domain with XYZ at the end of it. And in between, if you look at newest on sale and all, there are like hundreds, there may be even thousands of them out there. And most of them are pretty obscure, but there's just so much of a range of different things you can put in for your domain name at this point. Most common ones, of course, are .com and .org. Libraries you'll often see as .orgs. Some libraries are also doing .info. So you have that possibility. And you can see here the prices that they're charging for a year for renewals, for transfers. And it's not a lot of money, really. And they have sales on occasion. So, right now you can get .info for $4.99. It'll renew at $24.99, but anyway, so you can see you have a lot of different options on this. And in fact, there are a number of people who will just register. You can register as many domain names as you want, as long as you're willing to pay this fee per year. And even if you don't use them, you can have them. And so I always suggest to libraries, if you've had one, even if you're not going to use it anymore, keep registering it, because you don't want somebody else to grab it and use it. The best example of that I can recall was Lewistown Public Library lost theirs at one point, and a Russian porn site took it over. So that was not good. You don't want to see that. It's better to pay the $14.99 and keep it. When you're searching for one, what you do is you come up with the one that you would like, and you just pop it in the search box. And they come back with, if it's available, they'll tell you it's available, get it for your website, and you can buy it right away for $13.99, and it's yours. If it's not available, they'll give you some other options, like with other top-level domains, or variations in spelling or putting hyphens in or something like that. So that's all pretty easy. Any questions about domains? Okay, let's speed on through because we're running through. The next step is to connect it to a web server host. And there are lots of possibilities in that area as well. In the case of Hover, they have agreements with some where it's easy. You just do a couple of clicks to connect it. One of the ones that they work with is Weebly, but even if they don't have an easy connection, it's just a matter of filling in some information in forms. It doesn't require a lot of technological expertise. It just takes a little bit of patience, attention to detail, and not to get freaked out by a little bit of jargon. They have instructions. You just kind of follow through the instructions. Good customer service is helpful on both ends, from both your domain provider and the web host. And in which case, Hover has good customer service. So, they'll help you through those things. It just takes a few minutes really to get things set up. And when you're looking for your web host, the two things that I wanted to point out, and I put links to a number of these things, and I put more detailed information in a Bibliotechies blog post. And so we'll make sure that there's a link to that along the YouTube channel. So you can get more information on there. And I've given some that you can look for and ratings on various web hosts. But I think really what you need to be aware of is the pricing. And the pricing kind of irritates me, even for good companies, because they have like really low things. It's only $3 a month. $3 a month, but you have to pay in advance. And that's only for the first year to 3 years. And after that, it goes up to like $10 or $12 a month. But to try to find out where that actually is can be really difficult. They'll also offer free domain name registration, but that's usually only for a year. And after that, you pay for it. If you're going for the bottom level, they will try to upsell you frequently. So just beware of that. And virtually all of them do that. It's how they make their money. What can I say? And then once again, pay attention a little bit to what software they're using to build their sites. And whether you want to have one that's proprietary or if you want to go with WordPress. Since we talked a lot about WordPress, I wanted to just give you a quick look at what it looks like if you decide that you're going to set up an account. and this is from WordPress.com. And I just said I wanted to do a free account and single page because that's the easiest. And they give you a bunch of templates to choose from. And most of these are free. You know, there's one over here that's a premium, so you have to pay to have access to that, but you can just choose one. In this case, I just chose the first one to do a model for. And they give you on this, there's a little tour of WordPress that introduces you to some of the tools. There's one of the nice things about WordPress is since it is so common, there's lots of tutorials out there. There's lots of information on how to use it. So you can not only do their tour, and you can do little screenshots to save their tour if you want to, but you can go through tutorials and learn how to do it. But basically, it's just a matter of going through the template and finding the places for photos and text and replacing them with your own. And so I did that for a mock site, and I just grabbed some of the photos off of that I had handy. In this case, Course Library, Deer Lodge for that photo. Put in some links to random online catalogs. More photos. Put in, you might want to highlight some of your services here, but I'm thinking kind of basically kind of a stationary page, so that wasn't going to change a whole lot. So just talking a little bit in general about what they're doing. So it's pretty easy to come up with a nice looking website. By content, it took me about an hour to do this. And granted, I've done it before, so it wasn't first time, but it's not hard. Anybody can do it. The toughest thing actually in this case was removing the buy now button that they had on the template. It took me a while to figure out how to do that. But the content, and I'll include a link to this as well if you want to see what I actually did with this. So it looks good. The content could be better, and I'm sure you could all do better content on yours, but just to show how quickly and easily you could put together a website that looks decent. Any questions yet? Okay. So going back to, kind of the beginning, I think, you need to consider whether you want, when you're looking at just your web page, whether you want it to be just kind of a placeholder, a static web page, or you want it to have dynamic content that you're going to be updating regularly. A couple other things to think about is, do you want it to be an introduction to your service, to your programs, or kind of an archive? And I think early on, we did a lot of kind of archival websites where, libraries wanted to put in all of the information about their policies and all of the, minutes from their board meetings. And that's great as far as transparency goes, but I don't think most people ever use that. And with the Montana State Library as an example, we've got tons of information up there. It's really hard to make it so people can find it easily, and they'll still tend to ask you even if you put it up there. So I'm more of the keep it simple kind of philosophy at this point, especially for smaller libraries. I think some of the FAQs can be useful, so keep track of those questions that people are asking for all the time. And if you can give people answers to some of those right off, I think that can be useful. Like, how do I get a library card? How do I use the library's Wi-Fi? Some about hotspots, perhaps. It can be a really good promotional tool, but do you want it to be promoting timely things, or just kind of overall general, promoting about your library. And then, of course, providing access to your resources, particularly online resources. So people who are looking for access to ebooks, anything else that you might offer, access to your online catalog, that they can find that quickly and easily. I think those are all good basic things that you should always be looking to offer. And some closing thoughts. I think there's probably no such thing as a one-stop shop anymore. You probably assume that you're going to have a presence on multiple platforms, and these platforms are going to change. They'll become more popular, less popular, they'll close down. It just happens. Do keep things up to date and do check in occasionally, but don't think that you have to be on every platform. It's just, there's just too much for most of us. And finally, try to have some fun with it. I think, particularly when you're on social media, it doesn't hurt to, we don't have to be serious all the time. Be fun. We'd like you to do an evaluation for us. And so we will have this. This is a link to our evaluation survey. And we'll also make this available. I believe this will also be on the YouTube page as well, if you want to come back to that later. And I can try to put a couple more things in chat. There'll be links after I get out of sharing. And this is my contact information. If you want to get in contact with me, I'm happy to talk to you and look at things and offer suggestions. And we're almost at the hour as far as questions, but I'm willing to stay on and answer questions even after we finish the recording too. And that might make everyone more comfortable too, if you're not recorded with your questions. So thanks, everyone.
That sounds really good, Suzanne. I did put the link to the evaluation in our chat. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. I will close out the recording now. But before I do that, just know that I'll have the recording of this session available. It will be both in the YouTube channel as well as linked in the event for this afternoon session in Aspen. And just don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you might have about claiming credit for today. So thanks so much.